Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Heart to Heart. My name is Madiha, and with me today I have Sister Masuma Jaffer, who is the resident Alima at Stanmore Mosque, and she also has qualifications in counselling. She has counselled and given advice to hundreds of couples, individuals, families, and people of all ages in her time. And today she'll be helping tackle some of the issues that our viewers have emailed in with. Heart to Heart is a show that it's all about the viewer. We welcome you to email in at our email address, which is hearttoheart@safirtv.com. Tell us about the issues you might be facing at work, at university, at home, in your relationship, and Sister Masuma will try her best to help you tackle them from a religious point of view and from a practical point of view. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sister Masuma. I'm going to get right to it because there are lots of questions that have been asked by our viewers. I've got a young man here in his mid-20s who has said that he has developed a strong, I'm going to quote it, he said, "I've developed a strong dislike towards my sister's friends who do not observe hijab properly. I'm very judgmental of them, and I want to go up to them and tell them how to dress and behave in a more modest way. I'm really concerned that I'm developing certain tendencies that will come through when I am married. I just dislike these girls who are so immodest. What should I do?"
Wow. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay. The fact that he's acknowledging that he's being judgmental is a good thing.
Yeah.
This is to start.
Yeah.
I think I would quote him the verse of the Holy Quran, which starts off with the men to lower their gaze.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's noticing them so much is maybe part of his problem.
Yeah.
And it may be because he's going through hormonal changes that he will notice the opposite gender a lot more, and therefore it is more difficult for him. I remember actually watching a YouTube video where a Muslim guy actually, did this video where he was thanking the Muslim girls for covering up because it made his life a lot easier, and I thought that was really beautiful. So realizing that yes, it makes it a little bit more difficult for him. To make the assumption that they are immodest is huge.
Yeah.
There are lots of different reasons people don't wear hijab. One, mostly out of ignorance and lack of understanding of the religion. So to say that a person who's not wearing hijab is immodest, I think is
or they're not doing it properly. I think he said as well.
So again, hijab is a very personal thing.
Yeah.
What you consider as hijab, I may not. What I consider as hijab, you may not. In the end, we have to be answerable for our hijab in front of Allah, and I think that's really, really important to remember. I think if he's coming from a perspective of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy Munkar, where you're enjoying the good and forbid the evil, then it has to come from a place of love, not a place of judgmentalism and a place of holier than thou. That doesn't work. Or if his ego comes into play, it won't work. He may not be the best person to guide these girls because he has no understanding of what it is as a woman to wear hijab.
Yeah.
So it may
the struggles that they're facing, for example. Yeah.
So it may be easier for him to go through his sister and maybe talk to his sister.
Yeah.
And ask her to sort of help her and guide her friends and from a place of love. I think that's really, really important. I think it's this concept of being judgmental that really doesn't sit well with me, because I think the only judge is God.
It's so easy for us to look at the other and say, "Oh, you're not doing this properly."
Yeah.
When you just don't know the struggles they're facing, or what issues they're facing, or why they're doing what they're doing, and there's so many things that we're not doing perfectly ourselves.
I think it's a fine balance of not okaying what they're doing, because obviously to openly disobey Allah is wrong, and not wearing hijab is openly disobeying Allah. So I think I'm not okay with the fact that you're not wearing hijab, but at the same time I can't judge. I can't be that judgmental that I sort of say you're immodest and you're not a Muslim and you're this and I think that's wrong. I think my duty is to try to come from a place of love and help you on your journey towards obedience to Allah. Whatever you do in your own house is between you and God. That is, I don't have to get involved in that unless you need my help or you ask for my help. But what you do outside, if you're claiming to be a Muslim and then you're openly disobeying Allah, then I can't just sit back and be okay with that. So I can see where he's coming from in not being okay with it, but I think he's coming across very forcefully. And I think a lot of it may be due to his own ego, due to his own difficulties that he's finding when he sees girls who are not appropriately dressed.
Because I'm just trying to put myself in that position, and if I did have, I don't have a brother, but if I did have a brother and or if I had a friend who has a brother and then he came and told me, oh, you're not observing hijab properly, I would just be like, well, who in the world are you to kind of tell me, how to dress, or I feel like that would be quite inappropriate almost. It's almost on the verge of,
why are you looking at me?
Yeah, and that's not to say that he would be right or wrong. I don't know, because if he's telling me to do something that I should be doing, then it doesn't matter who he is to some extent. But you're right in the way that probably the best approach is to go through the sister. But if the sister herself is not observing hijab
we
properly,
don't know
then
that.
we don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We don't know that.
But it's difficult to kind of address that. But you're right.
So what he can do is maybe come from a place of love to guide his sister if she's not.
If she's not, yeah.
And then she then hopefully would then guide her friends.
Yeah.
Like you said, for a man to tell a woman is very, because a man has no idea the struggles that we go through in observing hijab in a non-Muslim country.
Yeah.
So and sometimes you sort of you switch off.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not wearing hijab and you're being told by a man, you switch off. So I think it's very important that it comes from a person who's actually observing those rights and saying, look, it's not as difficult as you think. And a lot of the times we do big it up in our mind. So if you're not wearing hijab, we think it's going to change our whole life and it's going to be so difficult and people are going to judge us, and it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
So it's like actually going up to someone and saying, what is it that's stopping you?
Yeah.
How can I help you?
Yeah.
What can I do to make you, realize it's really not that big a deal? If anything, I wish I'd done it earlier. I wish someone had spoken to me. It's like, so they get to that stage where they wish that, they'd done it earlier, because once you take that step, it's like God helps you. It's taking that one step towards God, and then, God will take metaphorically 10 steps towards you.
Yeah.
So it's that concept of helping each other out rather than judging each other and coming across as holier than thou. I think that's the idea here is, once your ego comes into play, then the other person's ego is going to come into play, and then the two will clash.
In the defensive,
it's not going to work.
Well, interestingly, the next person that's written in the question links to this quite well. I think it's a sister that's emailed in to say, so many of our Muslim brothers comment on our sisters' hijab, but what about the clothes some of them wear? Some of the brothers I see in our local masjid wear these trousers that look like leggings. They are so tight and the ankles are showing. It's so weird, she says. When did men stop being men?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two issues here. She's picked up on the hijab aspect, and she's also talking about men being men.
Yeah.
So in a way that she's finding what they're wearing is maybe not as masculine as it should be.
Okay. Is it haram, just to clarify, for them to show their ankles and wear very tight fitted clothes? For men to do that?
Okay. From the fiqh perspective, and only the fiqh perspective, no.
Yeah.
Okay. But every ruling has an akhlaqi perspective as well as the fiqh perspective.
Right.
So the fiqh perspective is very sort of, straight yes or no.
Yeah.
So for example,
that,
can I eat, I don't know, vegetarian pizza at Pizza Hut or any other pizza place? It doesn't matter which pizza. Can I eat a vegetarian pizza at a halal, non-Muslim pizza place? Fiqh-wise, yes, you can. Nothing wrong with it at all. Akhlaq-wise, then it depends on your spiritual journey, where you are, how close you are to Allah, what you want to impose on your own self to try to get closer to Allah. So I would be looking at things like contamination.
Yeah.
I would be looking
Utensils,
at things,
etc.
the utensils and things, whether they're using the same cutter and the same pan. I would be looking at who is actually doing the cooking.
Yeah.
All of these things are not wajib for me to check on.
Yeah.
But if it is being
affect
affected, it will affect my spirituality.
Yeah.
So then that's where the akhlaq comes into it. Now here, when you look at it fiqh-wise, the ruling in the Holy Quran actually just says for men to lower their gaze and cover their private parts. For the women, it's lowering their gaze, covering their private parts. and not showing what is not apparent thereof, and to ensure that their head covering covers their bosoms. So it's a lot more detailed in the physical covering for women. For men, it's not. It's just covering their private parts. But there's also a ruling which talks about the fact that if you wear something knowing that this will attract the opposite sex, then that becomes haram for you to do. So one is on your intention, why you're wearing what you're wearing. And secondly, if you know, even if your intention is not to attract the opposite sex, but you know this will, then that becomes haram for you to wear. Now, I think we need to be very open and look at how much women and men have changed. And, you know, in the olden days, women were not so proactive in approaching a man. They would, you know, they were a lot more shyer. They were a lot more, you know, they did not look at the bodies of men as much as women do nowadays, because it's, you know, subconsciously it's been ingrained into us, you know, in the posters, in the adverts, in the TV, everywhere. So I think women are much more aware of men's bodies and looking at them out in the public rather than sort of, you know, just in your own houses sort of thing. So I think girls nowadays would notice men's bodies, and if you have, you know, a six-pack and you're wearing something that's really tight to show off that six-pack, then I think that is against your hijab as a man. It's not because you're not allowed to, you know, you have to cover yourself, but it's a matter of, you know, you're actually showing off your body to the opposite sex.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had a lot of these sorts of debates with my friends and family as well, and it's always come down to, you know, what is the norm now, and that's not to say that just because it's become normal in society that you should do it, but for example, fitted clothes and sort of tailored and fitted and slim fit, you know, jeans and trousers and shirts have become the norm because they're seen as neater in society these days. So what would you say about that?
I think that there's a fine line between looking presentable and showing off your body. And I think, you know in your heart of hearts what you're wearing, whether you're doing it to look presentable, whether you're doing it to show off. And again, being true to yourself, I think is really, really important. Knowing that if you go out wearing what you're wearing, are you going to attract the opposite sex? Again, be true to yourself.
So would you say it's quite a subjective thing then?
Yeah, hijab is, even for women, hijab is very subjective.
And even this, you know, this girl's obviously looking at this man and saying, when did men stop being men? I mean, that's quite judgmental, isn't it? It's a little bit...
Again, it's her perspective of what, you know, men and women should wear. I mean, I think in the olden days, men did not wear tight, skinny jeans and things like that. It was just not the norm, you know. But it has become the norm now. Is it okay? I don't know. I honestly don't know how I feel about it. Again, you know, the whole issue of if a man is dressing like a woman, again, that becomes haram. But is he dressing like a woman, or is this the norm for a woman? And is this the norm for a man to dress now? Are all things, you know, questions that I think are very subjective to the time that we're living in, to the culture that we're living in, to our own selves as well. It's, you know, and the beauty of Islam is that it can fit into any time, any culture, any place, because it's not hardcore, and it doesn't specify that you have to wear this. It just specifies the basis. So for example, for a woman, she has to cover herself. You know, the only thing that should show is her hands and her face. Nothing else should be shown. Now, how she chooses to do that is up to her. Whether she wants to wear, you know, Western clothes with jeans and a long top, or whether she wants to wear a skirt and a long top, or whether she wants to wear a baya, whether she wants to wear a chador. Totally her decision. Totally her decision. But it's about not only covering yourself, but blending in as well. And I think, but not blending in at the expense of your religion.
Right, of course.
So there's so many things that come into it. But I think for men, for so long, all they've been told is, you know, just don't lower your gaze, don't look at women, and that's your hijab.
So they think they have it easy.
But it isn't now. I think there's so much more to hijab now. And I think it is up to the mothers to teach both their boys and girls about, you know, the concept of what is acceptable hijab wise in the clothes that they're wearing, as well as the way that they behave. And it's not just about the physical appearance as well, it's about the social interaction, which is huge. I think that's really, really important. So I think all of it comes into it.
Absolutely, it's an interesting discussion. This person emailed in with an issue that I think pretty much any 18-year-old Muslim would be facing when they start university. He has emailed in to say that I am an 18-year-old guy living away from home at university. My issue is that I want to partake in the party scene that all my friends are involved in, and maybe even get a girlfriend and be normal like other guys my age. But then I remember my religion, and I know I can't engage in stuff like this. This is so difficult. I feel torn between two cultures. What is your advice?
Okay. Alhamdulillah, he realizes that he can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
a big step.
That's a huge thing. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, that's really good. He talks about being norm. Norm according to who? If he was back home, that would not be norm. In the environment that he's chosen to live in, living away from home, this is considered as norm. If you were living in an Islamic country, that would not be the norm. So again, who dictates what is norm? And the problem, one of the main problems of living away from home, is that you don't have that Islamic influence,
the grounding that you have at home.
And going to mosque and everything. It's like it's not so much as it would be at home, and so you feel out of place. Whereas, when you're at school and everything, you may feel out of place a little while, but then you go home and you feel that you fit in. Here, if you're living away from home and you're surrounded by non-Muslims, then you're constantly feeling like you don't fit in.
Yeah, in the evenings, all your friends would go out and you'd be stuck in your dorm room, sort of just sitting there.
Or compromising your principles and your religion. So it's something to think about when,
a choice you want to make.
When you're deciding to live away, and as parents, whether it is something that I would encourage, my children to do or not to do, because it is very, very difficult. Even if you have the foundation, to not fit in at that age is very, very difficult. So I think that's one of the things we can take away from this. Secondly, he talks about the concept of. He talked about two cultures or something at the end. What did he
said? This is so hard. I feel torn between two cultures. Okay. So I guess he's looking at Islamic culture and then Western culture.
But I think when you think of Islam as a culture, you're demeaning it slightly. It is a religion, not a culture, and as a religion, it's a way of life. So it's not even a religion like most other religions. It actually is a way of life. It dictates everything to you, everything. The way you wake up, the way you dress, the friends you choose. What you do in your life, everything is dictated by God once you become a Muslim, and I think that's.
Do you think that's? I mean, you said the word dictate, and that's quite a strong connotation. I'm playing devil's advocate here. Is that something? Is the religion there to control you?
Yes.
Is it there to, or do you think that's actually there to make your life easier? So then you don't have to make those choices. Really, you're not really stuck between.
They're both the same
rock and a hard
in my head, and maybe. Because of the way I look at Islam, God dictates because God can, because He knows what is best for me. So again, what I need to do is get to a stage where I understand that God does not need me. God gets nothing out of my worship. God loves me. God has created me for heaven. He's given me a potential that He wants me to live up to, and He's trying to enable me to reach that potential and reach my perfection and therefore reach paradise. And He does that by dictating to me what to do, because I cannot understand what to do. And He doesn't even try to explain it too widely, because I would never understand it, because it's about the soul. And He says in the Holy Quran that they have but very little knowledge about it. And He's not keeping the knowledge away from me. It's because I can't understand it. I live in a physical realm. All my knowledge, my experiences to do with the physical realm. So even if He explained it to me, I wouldn't understand it. And that's why He's not explaining it to me, but He's dictating, He's telling me, do this. And if I have used my brain to understand that there is a creator, to understand that He has created me for a purpose, which is paradise, which is heaven, to understand that He's given me a potential that He wants me to live up to, which will then help me reach my perfection, to understand that He doesn't get anything out of this, to understand that He loves me and He's pulling me towards my potential and my perfection and paradise through giving me these rules, then intellectually, logically, why would I not listen to him?
Well, I won't go into the whole topic of, free, then what's the point of free will and all of that.
The free will comes in at the beginning with choice, a choice of becoming a Muslim. And I think that's what we forget.
Yeah, that we actually make that choice, even if we're born into it.
Exactly, and you need to make that choice. And I think a lot of people use the verse in the Holy Quran which says there's no compulsion in religion. That's at the beginning. There's no compulsion to make you a Muslim. That has to come from your own free choice and free will. Then even out of free choice, I choose to listen to him because intellectually it makes sense for me to listen to the person, to the entity which has created me, who knows what's best for me.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna very quickly touch on the concept of sort of temporary pleasures and temptations, and for this person, obviously, he's tempted to do all of those things that are temporary pleasures, and they are I guess, they could be said to be fun. How would you advise him to see the reality of why these things are I guess, forbidden in the religion?
Again, I think it's what you touched on, the fact that it is very, very temporary. The fact that even those temporary pleasures are not pleasures that are actually pleasures. It's like if you talk to people who live in the West, who don't have this concept of what Islam talks about, and relationships being under the umbrella of marriage, actually ask them how it feels to go from one boyfriend or one girlfriend to another and things like that, and the baggage that you have to then carry, and the hurt that you feel, the time that you invest in a relationship, and then when it breaks up. And in Islam, because God is part and parcel of that relationship, it's a little bit more secure. And it's more sort of grounded, and so the effort that you're putting in is sort of helped with the effort from Allah, if that makes sense, because you do it with the niyat of Allah. And a lot of the things, I mean, you see people who live in with no restrictions, and then they'll go through drug abuse and things like that, and they're obviously looking for something that they're not getting. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that we ask them, do you not believe in a Rabb? And when we're in the realm of souls, and everyone replied yes. So we have an innate need to worship something, because we know that there is a Lord that we need to worship. Now, if we don't look at the Lord, the Creator, Allah, then we will worship people, we will worship money, we will worship career, we will worship power, and all of these things will then not give us that satisfaction and that contentment that we're looking for.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, there's so many examples of celebrities that have everything that they could want in terms of the carnal desires. They can party as much as they want, they can have as many girlfriends and boyfriends as they want, but you'll see them go ahead and commit suicide because they're just not happy with all of there's no contentment, there's no sort of grounding, and
I think happiness and sadness will be always there in the world. But that contentment that you're looking for will only come through that connection with Allah. And you see that even in Karbala. Whatever Imam Hussein alayhi salam went through, there was never lack of contentment.
Just saw beauty in it the whole time.
Bibi Zainab's words, I only saw beauty. Why? Because she connected everything to Allah. And once you connect everything to the most perfect, you have perfection.
Okay, well, I think we've only got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to go on to our last question for today. So I have here a girl, I think it is, that has said, I have a friend who is a little bit lost these days. I mean, in the sense that he reads, or it could be a guy. I have a friend who's a little bit lost these days. I mean, in the sense that he reads all the stuff about alternative views of Islam on the internet. Anyway, he's come across this one guy who claims that we don't need the hadith or tafsir of the Quran. We simply need the Quran. But doesn't the hadith explain the Quran? How should I tell my friend that he's going down the wrong path without pushing him away? I don't know whether, what sect this person follows or what their friend follows, but what school of thought.
I think it's important to realize that the Quran in itself is not enough. The Holy Prophet didn't bring the Quran as a mailman and just give it to the people. It says that he recited, purified and taught, or recited, taught and purified, in which order you want to take it. It says that whatever Allah gives you, whatever the Holy Prophet gives you, take. Whatever the Holy Prophet tells you to keep away from, stay away from it. So again, the actions, the words, the tacit approval of the Holy Prophet is very, very important. Obey Allah and the Messenger. So again, it's not just obeying Allah. the understanding that the Quran itself is such a deep book that we really would not understand it without
by itself,
without sort of it being explained, and even then to a very superficial level compared to how the Holy Prophet and the Aima understood it. It's like me giving you a textbook in medicine and saying, okay, read it and now you become a doctor. It doesn't work. You need to have that experience and that understanding of a superior person in that field who can then teach it to you.
And are there examples in the Quran which sometimes contradict each other, for which you would need hadith or explanations or various other teachings to be able to explain them in terms of context and
I think the one example that really comes into mind is where the Holy Quran mentions so many times to establish prayers. What does that mean? Without hadith, what does that mean? We don't have in the Quran that you're supposed to recite 4 rakat, 2 rakat for Fajr and 4 for Zohar and Asr and Isha and 3 rakat. That comes from hadith. So knowing that even the foundation of the religion, which is based on salah, cannot be done without hadith. It shows how important hadith is. Explanation of the Holy Quran, again, the concept of obey Allah and the Messenger and those ulul amr, those in authority. What does that mean?
And what about hadith taqalain? What about that? Is that again? That's hadith. So if you don't believe in hadith, then it doesn't make a difference.
But if you do, the fact that the Holy Prophet said that he lives behind 2 weighty things: the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. And if you hold on to both of them, then you will succeed. If you take one, then rather than the other, then that will be your downfall. So it's important to hold on to both and take both of them, and that will take you towards heaven. But it's really difficult when you don't have the right understanding, because you could have the best of intentions, but you could be so pulled away. And this is where, again, I think I would urge people to look at the scholars that you're following, because just because a person claims to be a scholar doesn't necessarily mean that he is. We don't know what their credentials are. You don't know what path they're on. You don't know from what perspective they're coming from as well. Those, as you move on your path towards Allah, I think shaitan sort of focuses on you. And I think it's very difficult then to ensure that he doesn't pull you towards a certain path. You've got the fact that you have certain scholars who will sit there and talk about all the things that they can do. So for example, they can do this miracle and they can see this and they can do that. The fact that they need to brag about it scares me, because to me, my understanding is that a scholar is on their path towards Allah, and all of these things are just on the sideline, and it's not something that they would focus on. And the fact that they need to focus, everything that we've got from major known scholars is usually from their students who've noticed it, or from their family who've noticed it, and usually it's usually said about them after they die, because they themselves are not comfortable about you talking about their achievements while they're alive. So if a scholar's talking about it, him upping himself up, that's a bit scary. That would.
And I think it's the fact that this person is looking at alternative views of Islam on the internet, which in some ways is positive, in some ways it's negative. I think it's always good for each of us, even that have been born into a certain school of thought, to look at all the other alternative views. Almost by the process of elimination, you can kind of find the truth. And I think that how do I know that my school of thought is the correct one if I haven't discovered or read about the other ones?
Even take it back all the way back to, how do you know your religion is the right religion if you haven't looked at other religions or no religion at all?
That's exactly what I mean. And I think so in that way, I think it's great that this his friend is looking at alternative views, and it's always good to sort of take the good from alternative views, and as long as you're not compromising your own. On the other hand, the internet is always obviously very dangerous and a very dangerous tool to be using.
And I think if you have questions that come up from your research, actually go to people who are known as scholars, who are well known as scholars, and actually ask it. And maybe not even just one, maybe go and ask a few their opinion on this, and see what sits well with you.
Exactly. Perfect. All right, thank you so much for joining us on our show today. I hope our viewers have benefited from Sister Masuma's advice. As I said earlier, please email in on hearttoheart@safirtv.com with your questions, any issues that you might be facing at university, at home, at school, at work, and Sister Masuma will try her best to help you tackle them. Thank you very much once again for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum.